Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Vision Entrepreneurs panel. Thanks for being here. It's been a long and exciting day, and hopefully this will be an exciting conclusion to the day's activities here. We are here to speak with some brave souls who are serial entrepreneurs and have chosen Vision as their current ventures and possibly past ventures. We're going to try and make this interactive. We're going to take questions from the audience, so don't be shy. We'll reserve them maybe towards the end, but definitely start lining up, and we'll have questions for our panelists here. Very quick round of introductions as we get started. My name is Nick Gagwani. I am president and founder of Check Video, my fourth startup in the vision space, and have the distinction of having created the first vision-powered consumer residential camera back in 2010, and actually was a speaker on that topic right here at this venue many years ago. Since then, I've done vision applications in parking automation, and my current venture, Check Video, is a commercial application of vision technology for security and surveillance. So I find it exciting. This is, I believe, the most exciting time to be in vision, and for all the investors and wannabe entrepreneurs out there. Don't be shy. This is the time to jump right in. With that, let me introduce my fellow panelists here. To my left here is Gary Bradsky. Gary is best known for OpenCV. How many in the audience maybe have not heard of OpenCV? Don't be shy. You can come out. Right, so Gary pioneered that, and that has, oh my gosh, how has it changed the world of computer vision, making it accessible to millions of folks that download it, use it, learn from it, use it to experiment and build. Gary is also a serial entrepreneur himself. He founded the Silicon Valley office of Magic Leap, has done multiple startups, and an investor himself in multiple companies, several with vision. His current venture is Array, and he's trying to use vision and AI in the movie industry. So coming soon to a screen near you would be technology from Gary. Thanks for being here, Gary.
Thanks.
All right. To Gary's left is Radha Basu. Radha herself has been a serial entrepreneur. She spent many years with HP. And in a lot of ways, you might think, okay, that's HP. That's a big company. But she actually created the office for HP in India way back when in the 80s. And since then, she has started a couple of companies herself. One was called ScanSoft, which was used to create self-healing software. When you have trouble with your PCs, it actually figures out what's wrong and reports it back up to the manufacturer. Radha's current venture is an interesting one. It uses vision, but more than that, there's a social element to it. And we'll let Radha speak to that in a minute here. But the whole idea is to enable vision and AI and learning by annotating images and also spoken and written language. And so she's got a team of about 1,400 folks spread across the world that does that today. Again, Radha, thanks for joining us. And then lastly, we have Laszlo Kishanti from AI Motive. Laszlo has joined us all the way from Budapest, Hungary. So thank you, Laszlo, for making the long trip out. And I'm going to attempt, and I ask for your help in making sure that he believes he is in the right time zone, okay? So Laszlo actually started off, and this is, I think, a rare, but hopefully not soon to be a rare story. He started off in finance and economics and realized, oh my gosh, there's so much fun in doing computer vision, right? And here he is. I would say, come over to the right side of the force, as I like to say it. And we are glad to have Laszlo as well, so welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so let me perhaps kick this off by asking the panelists here what motivated them to start their current ventures. And perhaps Radha will start with you.
Thanks, Nick, and it's really a pleasure to be with all of the people. I was thinking it was going to be all engineers, but thanks to Laszlo, you're a finance person. So. I think that when we looked at the AI was really starting after we took Birdsoft public and we sold it and things, starting to look at AI. And AI was, this was more than 6 years ago, was in pretty early stages in terms of getting commercial. And if you look at the things that are most needed, my background is in services, and services of different kinds. And so we started looking at how does AI impact, how can we use machine learning to be able to do skilling of people, look at people from very diverse backgrounds, from different parts of the world, and how do we really look at commercializing AI from a services point of view. And two things came together, which was actually, has turned out to be very exciting. And while you go back to the 80s to HP and starting HP India at a time, nobody believed that you could do IT in India, and at a time when Bangalore was a sleepy town in the southern part of India. But today, when you look at AI, the most critical things are about, besides the technology itself, it's hardware, software, services. And what are the things important in services? We work with AI companies to enrich, train, and label data, so AI companies and people adopting AI can, at scale, get the most results and the best results out of their training algorithms. So we started looking at that, and then on the other side, and this is probably what makes it very exciting for me, we looked at a very diverse workforce. So a number of our people, we have 1,400 people. You'd be interested to know 53% are women in the technology space. And it kind of is natural in the order of the world. It's about 50+% women. So it's not unnatural. It's just in the technology space, it's 53% women. And more than 70% come from a background which is under-resourced, and they're not all engineers. So we started looking at how can we use ML and AI to skill people into the AI space, to be able to offer these kinds of services. So it's actually to help young people. Our average age, besides if you leave me out, is 24.6 of the workforce. So very young men and women who are absolutely leapfrogging into the AI world by participating in it and using machine learning itself to be able to do the skilling, custom skilling.
So there's a social element to it, and empowerment almost, right? You're trying to get basically a larger community involved in what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, it's as I said, it's actually close to 80% of the workforce comes from either below poverty level or very under-resourced. Like we have a center in New Orleans, we have centers in India, so they come from very poor backgrounds, and they don't have the masters or the PhDs in data science education. They're not engineers. But I tell you, at any time, I will put up our workforce, whether it be in self-driving cars, whether it be for medical diagnostics, whether it be for satellite imagery, a lot of computer vision applications. I'll put up the workforce against any set of people who are doing training and labeling. We've done more than 15 million images, maybe 20 million plus data transactions.
So your team is what makes AI smart, I guess, with all that training data.
It's intelligent humans working with intelligent products and technologies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe, Gary, if I can pivot to you here for a second, maybe focus on OpenCV. How did that come about? I'm sure there's a great story behind that.
I don't know, I'm kind of a poster boy for the unplanned life, people say, you must love what you do. No, I just do what I do. But and so I got into Intel, and I reflected back on my life, and I've noticed every single time I've had a boss, it's ended badly. I was fired from my first job. I was not only fired from my last job, but I was sued. And so I decided I shouldn't work for people, but should work for myself. But anyhow, at OpenCV, I got into Intel, and they said, well, we want you to write technical papers to put the lab, Intel Research, on the market, like get a name for itself. And so I of course said, there's no way I'm going to do that, because like Stanford's really good at papers, so what am I going to do with? And I started looking around. I saw that there wasn't an infrastructure, that MIT was kind of producing the most interesting thesis, but it was absolutely unrepeatable. And in fact, everything was unrepeatable. It was spaghetti code, spaghetti code.
A lot of silos out there.
And so I wanted to advance science by getting a framework. I also wanted to give everybody what happened when you came into MIT is they had a framework. And so you could do more interesting things. And so I go, well, let's just give everybody that framework. And that was, and I thought that's going to most accelerate vision. We were chartered with, making a use for increasing, processing power in the world. At the time, Intel was afraid, well, the game's up, spreadsheets run, word processors run, you can run them both at the same time, we're done. So, so they wanted, and it's one of the only times in my life where the original plan actually worked. So, that's ongoing now, and it's expanding. We're absorbing kind of open 3D into a larger foundation. That was Vladlen Kolton's library.
And the rest is history, as they say. So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Laszlo, what's your story? What motivated you?
I originally was in finance, as you said, and I needed to learn program because we needed to value complex financial instruments real time. That's why I learned programming, and we used AI first there. That was 20 years ago, so it was like very slow, but it was very important because it showed me what the possibilities are. And then I founded my first startup, which was in chip technology services. And we mostly focused on parallel computing, GPUs, especially for the mobile industry. And if you think about this, basically GPUs project 3D objects on the 2D screen. And the computer vision is the other way around.
Yep.
So after we saw that the GPU market and the smartphone industry is plateauing, my thought was that why don't we do something in the AI and the self-driving car space, because the data is there. You need to have parallel chips to process this, and we could use the same resources we already had in the old company.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's led to 2 awards today, so congratulations for that as well. One of the things, I'm sure we have a bunch of folks in the audience that create a lot of building blocks, right? The Embedded Vision Alliance founding members and a lot of members out there. And we're seeing a lot of really interesting demos and capabilities, if you will, in the exhibition. One of the things that I've learned as an entrepreneur is that there is a big gap or a difference between what's possible, in a lab or in a demonstration, and then you go in the real world, and everything falls apart, almost, okay? And so how do you take vision applications and commercialize them successfully? And that's almost an art, right? And I think that's a useful thing for entrepreneurs to understand and have. And again, I'm sure you folks have gone through that. So maybe Laszlo, again, I'll start with you. How do you see the transition from technology, where you have an algorithm, to commercial, and what are some of the challenges that an entrepreneur would face?
So a few years ago, AI company could be started by a few research people, few university students, showing that certain algorithms worked, at least in the demos. But now it became more industrial. So you need to have a data strategy, how you collect the data, how you test the data quality, and then, because our CTO used to say that it is now not about who has the best AI scientist, but who has the best data. And even if you have the best data, you need to have a process to test your algorithms and the quality of the algorithms within test beds. So, for example, that's why we built a simulator for self-driving cars, because we need to know how it would work in very adverse situations, because the customers need to be able to report, because AI is a black box. Many more conservative companies, especially in the automotive industry, they don't really understand this statistical methodology. Of course, what you do with a human driver is you see them driving for like 30 minutes and you provide them with a driving license. How can you make sure that this car or that algorithm which really you trust your life on them is good enough? And I think the major issue will be, and that will be actually regulated, I think, sooner or later, is how to make systematic benchmarking of what these AI can do and how safely and sustainably can do this.
Thank you. So there's a lot of effort that goes into engineering and measurement and test in making something successful commercially is what I'm hearing, right? Radha, would you have what?
I entirely agree with Laszlo. And I know we're not supposed to agree. We're supposed to kind of be a little combative, I was told. But what really determines making technologies commercial is that really the hard work, the engineering work to take it from the R&D stage, and it requires process. It sometimes reminds me of, things like clinical trials when you go into like a medical analogy and how much work it takes to be able to develop. All the edge cases, look at them, and just take, going back to self-driving cars, I think we've worked on more than 15 million images. And there are a lot of them that are very edge cases, and there are others that that can naturally be, the cars can learn from that. You can train AI to be able to do that. But then how do we really work on, it's those edge cases, it's those dark conditions, it's the conditions when it's very rainy, a variety of different things that determine different algorithms for being able to look at it. Unless you can go through all that, or you can look at how it can be a brake assist, or you can look at, we do a lot of facial recognition around whether it's drivers or whether it's, iris movements or things related to cancer cells. Those are all in the early stages. You get the algorithms, you get the technologies, then you go through the process, which is really not the sexy part of it, but the part where you have the processes, you have the rigor, you have the standardization, you have the ability to test we used to run these large functional validation suites. You have to have the equivalent of that when you're going into large commercial applications, because you want to have every use case be able to make it happen. And I think that's where, at least we feel, the kind of work we do takes it, and I think our biggest focus is on how do you take it from the R&D into how do we help companies take it from the R&D to the commercial
to the real world.
applications. Yeah.
Kerry, would there be an example you want to cite in this? I mean, with your vast experience, where going from a proof of concept of a prototype to a commercial application turned out to be not as smooth as you might have expected, perhaps? Gary?
Oh, I thought
Sorry.
you were.
Sorry.
Sorry, I wasn't listening. I just think I just think there's a confusion between the scientific method and science and advancing. Science isn't done by a hypothesis and testing. No one ever works that way. It's a gut intuition, and a lot of people are engineers. They're good at that, so they see the picture. Like, I want to do this. But it's really the engineering hypothesis is a method. It's where you then you have a hypothesis which you've already got by intuition, and now you need to prove it and work it. And it's just lacking in most people. So most people just cannot take a problem, a network, and get it to high performance because they're not methodical. And I absolutely hate being methodical. It's not my personality. I'm all ADHD all over the place. But now I have to leap into the team and say, look, okay. It's because people are making all this progress and they're showing a picture and a chart, and I go, I don't know if you're making any progress. Let's get let's get something, and I'm just going to do X translation, 1.5 pixels, and I want you to recover that value. And now, you know, let's go see that that's the case. And now that we have a known event, I want to see the coordinate transform is actually reflecting that, and it's not somehow been reversed. If you do a lot of 3D stuff, you know that somehow your coordinate system is always pointing the wrong way, and you got to like
Validate it in different ways is what you're saying, not just a
well,
linear path, right?
just the way of being very methodical, of saying I'm gonna narrow down the focus, I'm gonna nail this part, and I'm gonna understand it, and then I'm gonna make the next part, and then I can see that you're starting to master this problem and, you know, bring the performance up and the robustness up. And it's just rare, and I'm certainly looking to hire such engineering managers. You become very, valuable if you can take something through in a cordial, social way and drive a team to do that. But
So that brings me, in fact, so certainly there's a war for talent out there, right? And as an entrepreneur, you know, you're competing for talented folks. So Gary, you touched upon that. You're looking for folks that can do that. And one of the things that I've always, you know, I would just struggle with, but the question that I've always had is, do you hire folks in a startup because you're trying to ramp up quickly, so because they have the expertise and the experience, gee, I would love to have someone that, you know, that knows TensorFlow? Or do we hire someone that has the potential and is more well-rounded? So do you hire more for versatility, or do you hire more for specifics that, you know, experience that they have? What are your opinions on that?
are you?
Sure.
It's both.
But if you had to pick one, Gary, come on.
I mean, you know, for Superstar, my co-founder, he never graduated high school, and then he went to film school. He dropped out of that, and then I caused him to drop out of college. And but you know, he learned whatever, PyTorch or DeepNets. He learned it by reading the source code. Just okay, I got it, and he's brilliant in it.
So you're in the second category, right? But you're saying...
Yeah, but he's very, very rare. So most people, you know, are looking for the usuals, experience and training and track record. You couldn't fill up a company with such people.
Sure, got it. Laszlo?
Actually, I have a very similar story that our best GPU programmer is actually a dentist who left the
There we go.
university.
Finance, dentists, everyone's coming into this, guys. Yeah.
But in our company, we have started this 15 years ago. So everyone who enters the company has to do a 1 day to 2 week entrance project. I say the complexity is roughly the same for everyone, but who does it in 1 day, then usually he instantly gets a very good position. Who does it in 2 weeks, he gets an acceptance, but it's like the average. And because these entry projects always change based on what we require, this is one of the things they discuss even after years they spent in the company, because that many times I see that if you provide these engineers interesting problems, they are happy to do it even if they fail. And of course, it needs that your company should do interesting things. Probably, I wouldn't think it would be good for every company, but for us, where we always try to do high-tech stuff, engineers usually accept this, that it might take 2 weeks of their life to do something just to get the first interview.
Sure. So what you're saying is you, as the founder, as the leader, had to fill their pipeline with things that would be interesting, right? But again, you're saying if folks are more versatile, they can pick things up and learn it, that would be preferred over someone that's a specialist, typically.
So for AI, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there was not a single a textbook on AI. And so we couldn't expect that dozens of people will just knock on our door. I have an AI degree. A few of them had, but those were the very early birds. And so we would rather we have molecular biologists, physicists a lot, mathematicians, and we knew that if someone sits and reads 200 pages of white papers, he will know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Because that was the early days.
Sure.
Now it's a little bit different.
Sure. Yeah, but it's constantly evolving as well. And maybe rather, would it be accurate to say that since you are in the skill building space, that you're not looking for pre-trained folks, you're kind of training them?
Yeah, to a large percentage, but I want to add that to start with saying our best solution architect in computer vision is an African studies major who learned computer vision and is going to do programming, to do LiDAR, all kinds of different things, work with companies that did things that I hadn't even heard of some time ago. So self-learned. And so I think for us, since 70+% of our workforce does not come from, quote, industry, and we really look for those people who have that desire, the spirit, and their eagerness to learn new things. And then we just custom skill the heck out of them. And so they may not know. I'll give you a funny story. Somebody said to me that this is all embedded vision, so you may not know this either. But somebody asked me in a country like India, this is one of our India employees, she said, Dee, which means older sister, that's what they call me, Dee, what's a BPO? Everybody and their brother in India knows what's a BPO. And I was like, you don't know what a BPO is? You got to go look up on the internet. And I stopped myself and I said, no, don't do that. Because I want you to just really leapfrog into, being able to look at it in terms of how do you make AI work. And so I think for us, so much of it is around this custom skilling. It's one of the things that we work with about 80, 85 clients. One of the things that's really important to them is in the fact that they're getting a very custom skilled group of people and very focused. There's not a lot of bias, and because they are not exposed to a lot of things. You have to balance that with about 25-30% coming from industry. Frankly, couldn't hire a lot of AI people like you were saying, and they would come from different backgrounds. But that intense desire to learn new things and to excel at it, we have less than 5% attrition because they're always working on some exciting new project for a new customer. So it's just, that's the kind of workforce that we look for more than anything else.
That's phenomenal. Maybe, I'm sure this is a topic that some of you folks have questions on, so make sure you come forward, at the end as you have questions. Maybe jumping to a slightly different topic. Clearly, there's a lot of funding going into vision, and it is the next wave. We all feel it, we all see it. And I often hear from entrepreneurs that have been successful, perhaps doing a social media startup or doing some kind of a mobile app, and now are trying to obviously translate that experience and that learning into a vision startup, right? Is it translatable? How different is it? And how similar is it? What would your opinions be, Gary?
To do a social app and whatever, you should have someone who has good intuitions in that area. I don't regard myself as one of them. Now, I have entrepreneur friends who, he had the top iPhone app several times in a row when that was a thing and made a lot of money out of it. I wouldn't have guessed what would work. I tend to go for more enterprise things. I saw robots in distribution. There weren't any, and so that's made a company in it. I've seen it, sometimes I just, to me it's more like getting a feel for, when's the right time. You try to avoid two things, being too early and too late. Mm-hmm. Too late's kind of easy to tell, but too early is less so. And so we're doing this thing in the film industry. We're a little bit on the early side, so there was no one there's really no one competing with us.
You're the
And-
first mover, but you're the first mover, basically. Right?
Yes, and so that can be good or bad, but then hopefully you're not too early. But it's also like we could have gone for the consumer space. People are doing this kind of stuff on a phone, but we go, let's just go enterprise, high quality. We know, we only have to talk to 10 people, and see a need there, and let's just answer that now. And it is a tool that's serving.
So perhaps maybe you are highlighting maybe what might be a distinction. So in the social media, it's all about getting users and millions and millions. In enterprise, you're saying, I need 10 users, and I'm good, and I'll go from there.
The right 10, and knowing that you can actually answer what they want, and that's
So is
hard.
one more of a tractable problem than the other?
I've always gone on intuition, and it's kind of worked. On robots and distribution, it worked. We were actually early, but fortunately Google wanted to buy early in that field. It was probably a 10-year problem. It's still ongoing, right? But they're in like year 5 now. But it is hard to in this case, we went with initial hunch. I chose the industry because I was drinking whiskey with my friend who is in the film. I mean, he's interested in the film industry. And then I go, oh, that's pretty interesting. I don't know that that's the place to make money. I wouldn't have chosen it if he wasn't sitting there drinking whiskey with me. But then we okay, let's go get someone, a biz dev guy this time, because he was the co-founder with me last time, and I felt we didn't do a good job on sussing out the business. And so we got a guy, and we basically spent our first year really determining what the product is. And now I'm like, I have no... I bat VCs away who have any doubt that this is a product. Like, I just go, I don't even want to talk to you anymore. Like, I know this is a product. I know it'll
All right.
sell.
So it's the
There's
conviction,
tech
I guess,
risks
what you
with
think,
it,
yeah.
but so we did it a different way this time, which is just going out there talking with people and really working numbers and being on the sets and on films and talking with the Breaking Bad people and Beyonce's songwriter, and like we go, okay, I see what is needed, but.
True customer development. Radha, I mean, would you see a difference? Are some skills translatable and maybe others are not, or are all of them translatable?
Very good question. So I'm an enterprise software and services person, and when we worked with the self-healing software, that did go out on consumer, kind of on every ThinkPad and things like that. But when I look at this space, I think there is an approach and a way of scaling it that is transferable. It is not it doesn't make unicorns very quickly because it requires the rigor and the test data and the standards and the various different elements that actually create the depth and the insight and ability to go across enterprise companies. If you're looking at AI affecting the insurance business, or affecting or being able to impact data going to financial analysts, or those kinds of things which are large enterprise business, or retail for that matter, online retail, retail of any kind, then I think to be able to do tens of millions of products that people have, or being able to address insurance claims that create a claim management platform using AI, I think that does require some of those processes are transferable. What for me is different is until recently, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago maybe, I didn't really believe, even though we got into it full force, until about 4 years ago, I didn't believe how it is possible to do skilling and in using machine learning and AI in the skilling space and to develop and to start working with large groups of people to make it very inclusive. That was not very clear to me. Now I'm a complete believer in it. So I think that approach has definitely changed. And so some things transferable and some things think totally out of the box.
Laszlo, what's your experience been?
I agree with Radha and Gary, is that when I saw that Facebook bought Instagram for 1 billion, I saw we could do this like 2 weeks. But I would never.
It's different, I guess, is what you're telling.
So I think there will be a lot of new entrepreneurs who can catch this.
Sure.
And when most of the phones will have Edge AI, they will use it for fantastic things. But in my experience, what I did in all of my jobs is you have a bunch of data, financial instruments, chips, or images coming from cameras, and let's see how we could process these and make some conclusions which is useful for someone else, and we can sell this as a service, as a software. So I'm more a B2B guy, not a social entrepreneur.
Yeah, but I think you made an interesting observation where now you're saying all of the vision technology is going to help the social media apps gain more eyeballs.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? So it'll shift the other way, possibly, where you could translate some of that. Very fair point. Maybe address a slightly different topic, and I know this has been a point of debate in other forums as well, but there is a big concern out there that AI is going to replace humans in a lot of tasks, and that means loss of jobs, potentially. That AI could be used to do good, but it can also be used to perhaps do harm. And so, do we as entrepreneurs have an obligation, a moral one, or maybe a legal or financial one eventually, if there's a liability implied coming out of that? And how do you folks think about that? And if so, how do you deal with it? Radha?
I end up oftentimes being on a panel where I'm the only person saying AI is creating jobs. But I mean, it happens to be what it's doing for us, and you could argue that maybe I'm not being a visionary about it, a visionary entrepreneur. I'm just doing a vision company. But that we're adding about 150 to 200 people a quarter. And so, or maybe more, and so there is quite a bit of work to be done out there.
Sure.
But that is I know there's a point at which that the training will happen, but we're also retraining algorithms, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done, and people are growing point by point up this value chain and adding more. White glove treatment for a client becomes very important. Then you have to understand the application of it and really understand to provide the value to the client. I separate that from this word that stirs up lots of controversy in terms of an emotion about ethics and AI. To me, if ethics is integrated into the process and the thinking right from get-go, and that could be, ethics could be something like algorithmic, making sure algorithmic diversity, that it's not all biased. You're not just looking speech to text for, one group of people, like, maybe Californians or something. You're bringing in, especially in natural language processing, you bring in algorithmic diversity. You're looking at a variety of different, and even in things like we were talking about, this style categorization. We did an experiment where we looked at styles on a very large retail website. We were working for them, and they had told us to use this group of people to do it, and we just decided that we would show them that it can be very different depending on who did the style categorization. So we had our sales guy from Colorado, the team from New Orleans, a fashionista lady. We had a young Muslim lady from a place called Meti Bruce out really in a very conservative part of the world, and a few other people. And it was amazing, the results we got from it. So in terms of, and so we went back to the client and said, here is diversity of many kinds, and maybe that needs to be built in when you're looking at some fashion thing. So I think that thinking about it really deeply, making sure that AI is not in itself, the machine in itself is not trained in a biased way. And I think bias is good, but just having diversity of bias is good. And so building that into the scaling of AI is what I would say is very important from an ethics point of view. And you asked the question, do each of us have to think about it? And I think yes, whether it's a brilliant technologist, inventor like Gary, or a product, which I asked you, are you going to be the next unicorn? And you said maybe. And, or it's a services person like me. I think that is important to build in right now rather than wait for after there are issues with it. So that's my personal viewpoint.
Thank you. Laszlo, so clearly self-driving cars, I mean, if you get it wrong, there's a life safety issue there clearly, right?
Yes.
Does that bother you?
We try to use a lot of testing to make sure that we won't kill. There will be accidents, so people have super high expectations about self-driving cars, but actually there will be accidents. Even aviation industry has accidents, fewer and fewer, but still. I think
So you've come to accept it and say it's going to happen?
So, from the statistical point of view, it's very easy to explain. Obviously, if someone dies and the press and the public has different opinions, it will be harder. That's why it would be good if the government would set some framework how to regulate this, because everyone would be able to know. And I think this is the most important part about every new technology, is to educate. And I'm not very old, but I've seen the computer revolution, internet revolution, smartphone revolution, and now AI, computer vision revolution. And the problem is, it also provides a lot of possibilities for governments, developed countries, to educate people how to use these new tools efficiently, and educate the people and get enough new talent in these new economies. Because the problem is, if you have no clue about how AI works, then you will be afraid. But AI is just a tool which makes your data processing better than ever. And I think that's the important thing. If all the students, even in young age, would start to learn about these new technologies, actually they learn using their smartphones, by themselves, but not necessarily from the official course. That would make this use case less dangerous, because everyone would know how this can be used nicely or badly.
So maybe what I'm hearing is you're saying there should be enough guardrails, some regulation around that, and a lot of education about where it works and where it does not, perhaps, right? So that the expectations are tempered,
yes,
and that people are not expecting magic, although it is magical, is what I like to say. At some point, magic's also got its limits.
Yes.
And as long as people recognize that, then it's okay.
Yes.
Is that fair?
So I don't accept the premise at all that AI is going to reduce jobs, because again, I go back to first principles. People don't understand even what an economy is. Beyond like food, shelter, and water, and air, everything else, if I had everybody empty their pockets in this room and trade with one another, the net wealth in the room would go up. Because obviously you traded, you got something you wanted more than the thing that you had. And so the economy is basically just an expression of human desire. And we can, until we run out of human desire, we don't run out of jobs and reasons to do things that other humans desire. And so we're never going to run out of jobs. It doesn't matter. Now AI, okay, so I hate AI because we have no AI. What we have is good pattern recognition. AI is this causal counterfactual reasoning. That's what people think of an intelligent. If I didn't do this, then what would have happened? Causal reasoning. And that's not at all what we have. There is very little research in that area, and there's nothing deployed. So what we have with this pattern recognition is simply a better way to make machines, and people will find other desires to express, and will never run out of jobs ever with this. So it's just the wrong understanding of what the economy is, and so I don't worry about it, hurting jobs. It's just the next advance in the economy.
Okay, so there's no real AI. It's just pattern recognition, and we're not going to be subservient to robotic masters anytime soon, because we're always going to aspire to something higher.
They aren't a causal entity. They're not self-autonomous beings. They're not at all. Nothing like that. At the time they are, then when we have some other revolutions long beyond this one, they'll develop their own economy and their own desires. And the danger isn't that the AI is going to turn on us, but I love reading Lovecraft, because his monsters aren't necessarily evil. They just have an entirely different intelligence. So they're like us to the ants. The danger to the ants is like when they irritate us, or we just step on them without even bothering, right?
Can I add one thing? This is kind of a different view of AI. A lot of it is about, is AI taking away jobs, what's the ethics, etc. I think AI, I would just say sort of the next level, vision, computer vision, NLP, there are technologies emerging that early on, I think, have the possibility and the potential of having broader societal implications. And that is, for me, one of the both exciting but also very hopeful sides of AI. When you look at crop irrigation, crop layout, weather analytics, tracking the way in which Ebola spreads. So there are a bunch of things which some people call AI for good, I think. I mean, that's sort of saying nothing else is for good, but I think there are ways in which AI can really have broad societal applications. Cancer cell or cell categorization, or there is a number of things like that. And it would be nice if we could also focus on some of those when we think about AI and all the bad things that it can do. I know that there can be a lot of things that don't work, but these are things that really from early on, it's pretty exciting and hopeful.
So I'd like to hear some
Sorry,
counterpoints
Gary,
if there are,
agree?
and maybe we'll start with questions, Gary, on a second. Go ahead. There's a microphone there if you would use.
There are.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure everyone in the back heard the question. If not, if you would quickly summarize it, rather.
Yeah, so the question is that what type of education is needed for labeling and annotation and things like that. I think that's on a broad level. I think like any, for any project or any client requirements, it varies. You may start with, so you could have sort of what's called a general crowd being able to do labeling and annotation, and you can train people to do very basic things, and large numbers of people can do it on a crowd platform. When you start to get into a lot of things like the autonomous cars, then you're looking at people learn a lot from the millions of images or tens of thousands of images, and from that comes a continuous learning environment. Then you start to get curated groups of people. Then you start to move into, so you may be doing annotation, key point, and so bounding boxes, polygons, whatever. Then when you start to get to semantic segmentation and you get to more and more deep, or you're retraining algorithms and how you look at it, that requires a lot more training. So it's a continuous training process. Our experience has been that it is really important to have people who have some basic education, so for sure like high school kinds of education, But then you must have that real desire to learn and be able to do self-learning in blended learning and be able to learn from the platform, because a lot of the instructions are codified. And we have to invest in that training. So it can be inclusive, but it takes a lot of, it's almost like creating your little learning and development department within the company.
So that's exactly what I was alluding to, and it's a great segue into a broader problem. Could this be leveraged to reinvent education problem? Because, for them it's also humble, right? If I can make money with it and I can fund my education, would you guys be willing to invest in, say, machine learning talent, teach them how to code, and take it further?
Absolutely, and then as Laszlo was saying, a lot of times you bring in people, you might put them through 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is. We may put them through longer times, and I would say a majority of our young people are going through college, finishing college, and keeping on going. They're doing that as part of working here, and as he said, if you could bring in AI into the curriculum early on, I think that would be very exciting as well. Yeah.
Regarding data labeling, especially for cars and roads, people tend to think roads are static objects or somewhat dynamic. Cars in particular, in DMV's database, each number plate is associated to the car and its model, make and model. And make and model has certain dimensions to attach to it. Could this process be sped up by a lot if such information was available to autonomous driving companies? Not personal information, but just based on number plate, you could quickly fetch out, okay, these are the dimensions of the vehicle that's in front of me. Something like that.
I haven't thought about this, but
or would it be useful?
Obviously, it could be useful. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Laszlo. I think we have a question back here.
Hi. Is there a data set that doesn't exist that you wish existed today? A computer vision data set that you wish you had access to?
In my particular case, first of all, the segmentations that are out there don't apply to us. We're in the film industry. They want subpixel, alpha mass. There aren't really any data sets that are just stereo, using that for segmentation or active depth. Multi-camera, deep learning, leverage data sets. There's a ton of things that just aren't there, and half the problem or more is figuring out how to generate data or get a ground truth through some other way. And we have all kinds of thinking about how you do this, and setting up systems of equations so we can get a ground truth that's far better than a human could ever label, and then having to blend that into images in a way that doesn't automatically alert the network. But.
Yes, so for example, for optical flow, it's not easy to have ground truth data or depth, as you said, but the other way around is that if you don't have enough data, then for a certain specific task, what you might try to do is to try to teach or train a self-learning algorithm for depth, for example, stereo. This is a very workable algorithm.
I would think medical data sets of different kinds, but I won't elaborate more on that.
But I think it would be fair to say maybe in the vision startup space, you can never have too much data, and you can never have too much funding. Okay. One more question in the back.
I have
Go ahead.
Do you think Ray Kurzweil is right, and by 2030 we get general AI? And if we get general AI, do you think ET is waiting for general AI to happen, as biological evolution is too slow, and once you get general AI, you start to get exponential expansion of AI?
No. I'm actually writing a couple of papers on this. No, we never get to a singularity. There are a lot of limits to AI, and we never become immortal by some upload. Like your brain is built on certain structures, basic categorizations that you learn on. These are metaphors you live by. I know what being in a garden is because I knew what putting something in a box was. Eventually that structure breaks down as things change. It doesn't even work anymore, so you have to either get rid of all your prior learning and rebuild. You die anyhow. So the exponential increase, there are so many limits in speed and in categorical structure and in what has to talk to what, that intelligence itself is limited, perception is limited, it's a categorical thing. So we never, humans or any machine never even understands the universe. There's never an ultimate theory of everything. We never understand what reality is, and there's no singularity. But it's a nice Western myth, you know, that immortal God that will all become one day.
But Intel just came out with that quantum chip, right?
It's a fair question. Don't let that stop you from dreaming about it, because listen, all startup ideas are born from a dream, and that could be the next mega unicorn. So it's possible. Anything can happen.
Because this is a philosophical question, right? There's some philosophy.
Could I get one?
Sure.
Gary, you raised funding for kind of a non-traditional CV startup, and I'm kind of wondering if you could speak towards the challenges in that and how you overcame them.
It's hard. Make a name for yourself in some other open source project. I just obsessively network. I don't try to, I don't want to, I just do. I mean, it's part of my nature. So I've known basically VCs all over the valley, and then it was hard and boring and painful, and we went through a lot, and we refined and honed, and like months of this. I remember by the last fundraising rounds, like Ethan was sick, coming down with the flu. I was bored out of my mind, and of course I don't always pay attention, so I'm not even listening to the VCs, as we've seen. But so we just went through this presentation, and the business guy was out sick, and we didn't even care. And the guys in the back of the room, they stood up and they clapped. They go, "That was the best presentation we have ever heard." And so, because we've done it so many times. So I think persistence, as in so many things of life, pays off. And networking, you know, they say you're never known for what you do at work, but for what you do on the side. And I've always done a lot of things on the side, often to my detriment.
But maybe thank you, Gary. So the startup I did prior to this was in a non-traditional CV space. We were automating parking, helping you find a parking spot, right? And like in any other enterprise, you know, find a lead customer and have them part with some money, or a promise to part with some money if you can solve their problem, and then good things happen from there. If you don't have the network, you don't have a side hustle, that's one way to do it.
Thank you.
Sure. I know we're getting a lot of questions, so maybe we'll take one more. And I'm sorry, if you can take that offline, your question, but yes, go ahead.
Quick question. How do you guys decide how to filter down all the ideas you have into the next startup you're going to do?
Take that.
I think if you start doing anything, then you will always come through other ideas, and every day you make a decision about if you want to continue what you are doing or want to jump to a next idea. I think it's, for most of the people, it's kind of like natural, but you need to start something, because when you start something, you either be successful or fail, but after even a successful idea, you might it might lead to the next successful or failure ideas. I think it's just kind of like natural if you have the risk taker ability to taking risks. That's my opinion, but it's obviously a very simple one.
What you have heard echoed here is a lot of folks will go with their gut, right? It's an intuition. Sometimes it's over a bottle of whiskey at 3 a.m. and you go like, let's just do it, right? So there's some of that as well. And some are very methodical and go out and analyze markets and talk to a lot of folks and, try and, find a niche that is underserved and try to disrupt it. But it's always.
I think you also just give up on trying to get the best idea and choose one and focus, like cut it down and down and down and do that.
All right. All right, thank you.
Sometimes
Go ahead.
you have no idea that this is the best idea. It's an idea that it comes to you, you feel good about it, and you try it. Like Laszlo says, that risk-taking, really, you go with your gut, you take the risk, you build it, and sometimes out of that process comes out some better ideas, and then you take a risk with it, and sort of it's the evolution of risk-taking or evolved risk-taking. I don't know, it's something like that. It's sort of gut and risk-taking, I think. And I would say add one more thing is as you then start to, you think the idea is really working and you have an anchor client or you can show some results, then putting together a really good team around you, of a leadership team, becomes so important because that's what allows you to go to that next level.
All right, at this point, I think, I know there are more questions, so we'll take them afterwards, but I do want to thank all the panelists, thank all of you guys for staying here and joining us. Thank you.